I'm going to go through the call just very quickly, and then I'm going to introduce you to two of our prototype fellows who very kindly agreed to come and talk to you about what their experience was like, just to give you a kind of bit of background and a bit of sense of what it's like working with us on this programme. There's still people coming in. It's a wonderful thing. Great. So I'm going to tell you first a little bit about the Southwest Creative Technology Network. We call ourselves SWCTN for short, as some of you know, which is mildly irritating, but obviously we called ourselves the Southwest Creative Technology Network, which is quite a mouthful. SWCTN is a Research England funded project from their Connecting Capabilities Fund, and it aims to increase the use of creative technologies across the Southwest. It's a partnership project. It's led by UWE alongside 3 partner universities, which are Falmouth, Plymouth and Bath, and Watershed and Collider as well. Collider is a watershed-like organisation, a creative studio down in Exeter. Each year we take a theme and we run a research fellowship and a prototype fellowship around that theme. And in the last 2 years, we've looked at immersion, as many of you will know, and we've looked at automation. Some of you, I can see some automation fellows here, Ron. And we are doing data this year. So this is our year of data. Good year to do a year of data, what with everything that's been going on. So roughly our year splits into 2. All year we run a research fellowship, which is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime offer. We give people £12,000 to take some time out of their work or their studies or whatever they're doing and do some blue sky thinking around data and creative technology. So you can see those people on our website at the moment. I'm not going to share screens right at the moment because it's going to get complicated, but they get to collaborate with the 24 people that are our fellows. So, and that's happening at the moment, and there's a really great group of people working on data there at the moment. This kind of space offers this kind of space is good for creatives because it gives them the space that they often yearn for. Working with the other fellows for them is a really collaborative and wonderful experience. So we're really proud of that. But the second half of the year is all about makers. The first year is about thinkers. The second year is about makers. So you may be a thinker and a maker, fear not, but the prototype is definitely about the makers. And this is the Data Prototype Fellowship, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to share my screen and just talk you through the call fairly quickly because it's fairly straightforward, and I hope we've managed to write a fairly straightforward call. I hope you can all see that. If you can't see it, someone's going to need to tell me verbally because I cannot see you. So this is the call here. Oops. And what I obviously can't move that. Yes, I can move that. What we're aiming to fund is ideas for prototypes in the field of data. And we want to come up with an idea for a product or service that fits with our themes and our criteria. And we want something where you have a really strong team to make it with. I've realised I can't actually move this, so I'm going to stop my screen sharing. That's what it's making me panic. We want to encourage collaborative working practices, which means we want to see you working with an interesting group of people from diverse backgrounds in the social sense and in the skill sense. And we also want to grow new creative businesses in the Southwest. And by that, we may very much mean an entity that allows you to continue to do the thing that you've created, to do the thing that you love. And we're not about multi-million-pound startups here. Although if you've got one, it would be very welcome. But we're not about multi-million-pound startups. We're talking about businesses that support your work, perhaps with an alternative business model or an existing business. So as you can see from the call, we define a prototype as something that demonstrates an idea which is shareable with the public and investors. It tests a new experience, process, service or product with its users, but it's not necessarily fully finished or completed. And it's scalable, not just a one-off project. That's really, really important. We do get quite a lot of performance projects through. We don't do one-off performances in particular because of the creative tech world that we work in. People quite often put those in. It may include an event as part of testing with users though. And we want something that's really got a strong plan for its future. So with ideas about its audience, its route to market, its business development and future investment opportunities, including any cultural funding models you might be thinking about. So I can see there's people here who work in the cultural and creative industries, Rich Warren, and obviously that's, you know, those kind of things do fit in. What else do you need before you apply? The main thing is a team, I would say. It's very different from our fellowship, which is made up of individuals working on their own. We are obsessed with collaboration across our network. That is our driver. That's why we set up the fellowships in the way we did, to help people to collaborate. We want to see a strong team, and it's really important you have a team in place before you apply. It's kind of, it's not one of those things where you say, oh, we'll do this later on. Some of those people will be freelancers, some of them will be part of your business. So it's important to have that difference in mind, and understand, very importantly, where the IP sits in that entity. So if you're aiming to start a new business with some people because you're making a prototype, think about where the IP sits. Think about getting some help. There are various places that you can ask about IP support through universities, through places like Watershed Time Bank, that kind of thing. And we can probably point you in the right direction of that as well. And then, really importantly, make sure your idea fits to the themes. I'm not going to go through all the themes now because you've all got that, hopefully got this document to hand. But those themes are inclusive data, data in the public, data rights and ownership, climate change, and healthcare and well-being. If you've got any questions about those, do ask us. But also remember that you can book a surgery with us to go through things in detail. So if you've got questions about your project in particular, you probably want to book a surgery, which sounds like something it isn't. You probably want to book a meeting with us, you know, in the next couple of weeks. And the dates for those are on the website. But also you can just get in touch with one of us and just set something up if you can't do those dates. We're really, really keen to talk to you. And my experience is the people who are most successful are the ones that kind of talk things through first. And then last but very not least, it must fit with our criteria. So our criteria are pretty straightforward, and they're really just things that we hope you would think about in your project anyway. And it's just really giving you a steer for what we're looking for in a prototype. So we'd want them to fit to the theme, and we would want, so those themes we just talked about. We'd want it to have some commercial potential and possible social impact. And that's the understanding of the current potential market and the scalability of your idea and the route forward. So when we say commercial potential, again, it doesn't mean that it's a multi-million-pound project, but it does have to have that scalability and lastability. And impact in the Southwest kind of comes into that because that's very important to us. Again, we need a good team. We really need you to think about inclusion. Inclusion is something people struggle with, but obviously it's extremely important and has become happily increasingly so. Showing what that looks like in your project may look very different for some of you, but that is definitely a make or break criteria for us. So again, discuss this if you think you have any problems. There are some good hints about that in the FAQs, which are also on our website, that really talk about things like design and staffing and some areas that we think you should look at. Audience, again, is understanding who you're making this for, and if you understand what that market looks like and what you're going to do about it. And ethics. We put ethics in this time because data has a lot of ethical issues, as you all know, and we could have put ethics into our automation and AI call, actually, and we do pay a lot of attention to ethics when we're thinking about these things, and that's just not about not funding arms dealers. That's very much about you showing that you've got an understanding of what the ethical challenges in your prototype are and what collecting and using data might mean. And thinking about those questions is really, really important. And being able to speak about that is important in your application. If it's not clear, it won't get you into interview. So what are my top tips? My top tips are read the call and the FAQs. That would be my top tip. I think that's really obvious, but quite often people do, and they're perhaps not very honest with themselves about whether this call fits. We are in a time of, well, we're in a difficult time, apparently. And I think it's good to be honest with yourself about whether you actually fit this call. Be really clear about whether your idea fits it. Try not to bend it round like we all do with funding, because we have all got limited time now. And obviously there are a lot of opportunities coming up out there. So make sure it does really fit. Look at our previous prototypers, particularly recommend watching the immersion prototype films on our website, because those really give you a sense of the kind of things we fund. It's quite an eclectic bunch. Think about yourself 10 years into the future. Is this the project you should be bringing into the world? Ask yourself that question. Make sure you have a really strong team. Be clear about where the data is in your idea. Where is the data? Is this a data idea? Be clear about what is innovative in your prototype. What's new? Are you absolutely sure it's not out there already? Can you achieve it in 4 months? 3 or 4 months is what we have for the prototype, and that can sometimes the actual feasibility can be an issue. And be clear about the criteria. Don't apply as an academic if you, unless you have a very clear and specific IP agreement in place, and there's more information about that on the FAQs. And if you're stuck, please talk to us, because we are super helpful and lovely, and we really can help. This is the 3rd one that we've run. We are getting good at this now. So if you've got any questions about any of that, it would be great to put them in the chat, and we'll collate them and answer them at the end. That's kind of what we'd say about the call, and that's the kind of thing that I would probably say if you came to see me for a surgery, and I'd go through the themes, and I would go through the criteria with you and kind of make sure that everything fits. But I thought it would be really useful today to talk to 2 people who have been through this process, who have really benefited from it in many ways. It's been a really tough time for the Southwest Creative Technology Network, and we are not the only ones. Obviously, it's been a tough time for all of us. But I just wanted to introduce Tanuvi Ethanandan, who's an automation prototype fellow. She's a chartered accountant who runs a company called Data Duopoly. If you wave, you'll be able to see her. She runs a company called Data Duopoly with her colleague and co-founder Erin Morris, and they are developing a product called Explore Eden. And Data Duopoly are on a mission to revolutionise the visitor experience in any venue across the world. It's actually a data idea. We should have nicked it for data prototypes. So what are you going to do? They are creating an innovative new platform to allow venues to better understand customer behaviour, optimise visitor distribution and on-site, and increase on-site revenue. We're really excited about that. And Paul Cheney, where are you, Paul? Wave, there you are, you're right next to me, but probably not for everyone else. Paul's a contemporary artist, and he's exploring post-collapse food systems using digital technology and public participation. His prototype's called AIM, or agroecological information model, and aims a prototype. It prototypes intelligent software tool for automating the design and ongoing management of agroecological food systems. And agroecological food systems are things like permaculture, forest gardening, types of perennial horticulture, and they utilise plant and insect polycultures to generate biodiversity and soil fertility alongside human food. So really interesting sort of gardening, agricultural based idea that we've got very excited about recently. So I thought I'd just ask you both a few questions. If I could start with you, Tanuvi, can you tell me a little bit about your prototype?
Yes, so I think we as automation prototype fellows certainly encountered a challenge with COVID sort of striking right at the beginning of the program. So we had the good fortune of meeting all in person in Exeter for one time, which was fantastic to meet everyone and hear about the great ideas. And what we set out on a mission to do was, could we use, the Eden project as a test bed, but actually develop smart routing to get people away from the crowd, but also incorporate low mobility routing, which was something that was quite personally close to our hearts, because we thought a lot of people, when they go to a visitor attraction, actually they don't have the confidence to know where they can go next. Wouldn't it be great to put that information in the palm of their hand and based on our AI algorithms, send them where the least busy route are most appropriate for them? And there could be application for young families who might understandably not want to be in a really busy area at certain times and might have the flexibility to say, actually, if someone's telling me it's really busy right now, but might be less busy in 2 hours' time, why don't I follow that advice? But without forcing anyone. So what this prototype journey really allowed us to do was develop these AI algorithms and test them. And originally our plan was to test them at the Eden project, and then COVID struck, and unfortunately venues across the world had to close their doors. So I think credit has to go to our whole team when we just had to think on our feet, and we so happen to all live in Cornwall, and 2 of us live in Penryn. So we converted Penryn town centre, or the tiny road, should I say, into a sort of mini venue, and we were testing that way. And I think what it really showcases is that we can showcase our technology and test what we wanted to do, but using a different test bed at a moment's notice. And what was really exciting is to see how we could interact. So rather than having real life visitors testing out a product, we almost created fake visitors with the code and seeing how, if we put an offer on, how that might interact and how will that change flow. And actually building that all out was a great learning curve, because before we were building on something we were quite familiar with, and suddenly we had to deal with something we were quite unfamiliar with. And I think it's actually set us up quite well in the future, should we have to adapt to a new client, starting from scratch all over again. So it's been a whirlwind of a time, but really exciting to test our idea. And, I was telling Melissa and Paul and on the people on the call beforehand, we feel truly quite honored to be part of this program, because we've met some really exciting people. And it so happened there was also a team involved in our prototype fellowship that was also working with the Eden project, and we developed a lot of synergies. And I think that really helped with us sort of, talking to people as well and understanding what pain points they might be having from a different perspective. So I think the network around you can't be sort of underrepresented. It really is quite a valuable process. And we've been very fortunate with sort of the Falmouth representative as well helping us. I remember we had a mock client case study. So near the end of our prototype, they pretended to be a venue owner. I think it was Tyrannosaurus Rex theme park, so called, and they interviewed us. So we're taking our prototype and getting us ready to the stage we can then pitch to future clients. And I think that's something really valuable in this program, that it's not only the funding, which is great, it's not only the technical support, which is great, but it's also the business acumen and the network all around it, which has been invaluable for us as a very small female-founded business, and we felt a lot of support for that. Oh, sorry, Melissa, I think you might be on mute. Sorry.
Yes, I am on mute because I still don't know how to use Zoom. Paul, can you tell me a little bit about what your idea was at the beginning and how that developed?
Yeah, for sure. So as you said earlier, it's basically a software, and it automates the design of food forests. which is, as you said, a form of permaculture. So basically, it takes 3 sets of data. So the data has a database of plants, and it uses geographical data for a particular site, and then user preference data, and basically selects the right kind of plants for any geographical site based on limitations like soil pH and frost hardiness zone and things like this. And then an algorithm, which is basically a genetic algorithm, finds the perfect sort of positions and planting combinations and of the plants within the site, so it distributes it across the site. So that's where the sort of automation part comes in. And for the prototype, we decided to look at 2 things. One, of course, is to prototype an algorithm, and also to prototype a user interface. And I think the important thing to remember is sort of about limiting expectations for a prototype. I think this is something that came up for me, was just remember that it is a prototype. It's like you've got to be clear about what you're prototyping, but it doesn't actually have to be like a final finished polished product. So as long as you're clear about what it is you want to test and why and what you expect the outcomes might be, or what the outcomes that you're looking for, then I think that's important to realise. Yeah. Sorry, I can't hear you.
It's because Hannah keeps muting me. I think that's a really useful point, that you have to be clear about what you're trying to achieve in your prototype, because we do have prototypes that come at different stages of development. Some people are at slightly different stages to others. Sometimes it's more of a proof of concept than a prototype, and sometimes it's a little bit further on. So just having that clarity is really, really helpful. Tanuvi, can you remember what your interview was like?
Yes, I think so. So it certainly was quite different. It was pre-COVID, so it was in person in Exeter. And I think I remember quite clearly, we had technical issues at the moment we walked in. So I think at the moment we were like, oh no, it's not working. But I think it was a great opportunity for us just to talk to the team almost informally before we did our real sort of presentation. And I remember it being almost 40 minutes, 50 minutes. I think we did a presentation and we had loads of questions, and I think that was actually a really important process for us, because it made us think about things and like, actually, yes, we know that, or we're like, actually, let's go away and think about that a little further. And then we were able to sort of clarify them later on as we went on with our prototype journey.
That's great. And what can you remember your interview, Paul?
Yeah, for sure. I was really scared, of course, and felt very unprepared. But no, it was really great, actually. And the panel were really supportive and engaged, and like didn't feel hostile at all. I would say, like, I wish that I had practiced a little bit more, because 5 minutes should really be 5 minutes. And it's sort of like horrible when you just get towards the end and feel like you have to cram everything in. So it's, you know, it's obviously about being sort of making sure you cut out all the fluff and like hit the hard points. But yeah, I think it was the first time I'd actually sort of done a business type pitch like that. I'm very used to public speaking, but you know, as an artist with an audience where you've got the audience for an hour and you can just ramble, and then it doesn't matter if you don't finish your talk where you've said you were going to finish it anyway, because that's fine, you know. This is a very different situation. So it was a good thing to sort of be forced into. And I wanted to say also that the pitch scenario was kind of like, we kept on going back to that throughout the whole, the prototyping the business course. So there was lots of opportunities to pitch and sort of refine those skills and build the confidence. That just one thing I've really got down now is that sort of confidence to pitch to investors or whatever. So that I think the first interview pitch was actually part of that process.
That's great. We do some pitch training. I don't know whether you did that. We do a bit of pitch training before the interviews for people, because we recognise that pitching skills can be a barrier to inclusion. So we do some pitching skill training beforehand. But it's a pitch and interview that you get for the prototype. So Paul, what have been the highs and lows? Tell me the highs and lows.
Yeah, okay. So the big low for me was like pretty much a week in. In fact, just after the first workshop, the first meeting that we had, the only meeting we had in person before the COVID struck, my main partner and future business partner had to leave the project because of personal issues. So I was kind of like left on my own, and I thought, I know this is the end of it. But I contacted the team and the group, like the team supported me, encouraged me to continue. We worked out a way to find a replacement, and I was given help with developing a technical brief to actually find someone that I could subcontract. And then as the project went on, developing a professional relationship with this subcontracted team who had replaced my kind of official team at the beginning, and we've ended up forming business together. So it's like that never happened. It actually completely come through. So that was a sort of like yeah, that could have been the crunch point, and could have been, it was a low point, but the team helped me through it. High points, well, forming a limited company, I guess. I mean, suddenly I'm a company director, and I've got a board of directors, and we're working on this thing together. And reaching the end of the prototype and having this working prototype, having this idea actually in hand, and you know, being able to show it to people, it's really amazing. And so that was a huge high, of course.
That's great. I'm going to ask a couple more questions, then we'll do actual questions. What were your? It's hard to imagine you having any lows, Tanubi, but did you have any lows, and what were your highs?
I think every company had some lows. So for us, I think I focused so much on COVID, but I think being in the visitor attraction industry space and having a prototype centered around that, COVID had such a big impact for us. And I think not only could have lost our test bed, but I think also we thought about the long-term implications. Would venues want our product? Were they going to reopen? Would people have cash to buy a product like ours? And I think there was a moment where we thought, what's the long-term view for this project? Can we do something else? Is our technology still relevant? So I think that would be a low for us, and also a really interesting point that we had to consider. And I think it was really good for us as a company to overcome that in quite a safe space. I think for our highs, we've actually had quite a few, which is a good thing. I think one of the great things is we were contracting our technical development, and very similar to Paul, it worked out so well that individual has now joined our company. And I think that's a great way to have someone join your team in a very de-risked approach. Having someone that you pay as a contractor, and then you realize how well you work together and you can bring them in. I think that's a really happy ending to sort of the prototype. And in terms on the back of that, we received some fantastic news that we were using our AI algorithms and testing them to move people away from busy areas. And the prototype came up from the idea that we just hated queuing, it's frustrating, and it reduces revenue at venues. And then actually, with social distancing and the rise of the fact that you don't want to be in crowded areas, it became more relevant than ever. So having the ability to shift to that actually unlocked further funding for us. So we are actually currently going through a seed round with an absolutely whopping match funding offer of £125,000 secured because of SWCTN. And I think, you know, Erin and I were just saying on the call beforehand that if we hadn't had the SWCTN support to enable us to get to that point, we wouldn't have been in a position to accept that match funding to take on an even bigger project. So for us, that's been an astronomical high to think of a small company of just 2 women, then growing it to a team of 3, growing it to a team of 4, and now unlocking this huge match funding. I think that shows an opportunity for scale that was only possible because we were able to do the prototype at the right time, it so happened, for the market.
That's brilliant. I know it sounds like we got the right people in. We did get the right people to talk today, but that's the kind of result that we're really going for. I was going to ask you what you got out of the process, but I think you both answered those questions. I suppose the last thing is, what plans do you have for the future? Paul, do you want to answer that?
Am I still... Yeah, I'm still unmuted here. So next steps for the company are really sort of like putting together portfolio materials to start pitching for further funding. which, as I said, I think I've got the skills to do that, or a lot of the skills to do that from the business development course. Another thing that's come out of sort of talking to people in other teams in the cohort and doing the course is like understanding where the gaps are in the team. So I'm now kind of like, as well as looking at fundraising, I'm looking for people, looking for other partners, and sort of like whether to subcontract people or whether to try and bring people on board into the company. So, you know, we don't have any sort of sales experience, and so lots of marketing, branding kind of things need to happen. Just following up really on connections that have come through during the course, and ideas that came to the fore during the showcase, of which there's many. So I'm really looking forward to following some of those things up. Haven't had the big lucky break that Tanuvi and Erin have just had, but it does feel like it's just around the corner. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Tanuvi, what's your plans? You've already talked about your funding, which is wonderful.
So I think for us, it's really growing our team now, because suddenly we're now servicing a lot more. But one of the really exciting things that we were able to get another low-cost paying pilot on the back of the SWCTN prototype. So again, sort of extending our scope and region and remit, and again, doing very much a pilot, but with some revenue coming in. And that's really exciting for us as a company to see other people seeing the value in what we achieved with Eden and wanting us to try it with them. And I think probably as a new company, that's probably the best sort of market traction you can get, when someone else sees it as a customer and says, I'm willing to pay to have the same technology. So that's been sort of our next steps. And again, it'll be growing our team and trying to get as many venues on board to benefit from our technology as possible.
Thanks, Tanuvi. I just wanted to say thanks to Tanuvi and Paul. I'm clapping, I know you're all clapping. And say the reason that we got them in again is because we wanted to give you a sense that the prototype call that we've just put out is not just about the prototype. What you're doing is you're applying to become part of a fellowship of you know, up to 8 other businesses. You'll work with them, you'll have workshops with them. We have a kind of really great structure of workshops that take you through things like pitching, you know, thinking about starting your own business, setting that up, thinking about your audience, thinking about all kinds of things like branding and funding, all the kinds of things that, you know, that perhaps quite often creative tech and creative people struggle with. And that's really exciting as well. So I suppose just having that in the back of your minds, if you're going to apply, it's not just about the prototype, it's about kind of investing your time as well in a process that hopefully you'll get quite a lot out of. So I'm going to move to questions. We have a lot of questions in the chat. If we don't get to answer all of them today, which we won't, we will try and answer as many of them that we don't answer in the FAQs on the website, which is a live, living thing of a document. I've also got other people to help me answer questions here, which is Tom Chuella, who is our project manager, and also Andy Wood, who is here, yeah, and maybe he's there for you. So Fern, do you want to give me a question?
Yeah, so the first one that we had come through was, does the whole team need to be based in the Southwest?
I can probably answer that question, and Tom can back me. The answer is no, it doesn't need to be all based in the Southwest, but you do have to have a strong connection to Southwest. And the most important thing is that you're showing what your impact in the Southwest will be. That's what we want to know about. Yeah.
Excellent. Next one. So someone in the chat would like to hear more about cultural funding sources, and which sources do you have in mind, or would you recommend?
So I think that's in response to something that's in the call about other money that you might have in your project. Really, with probably thinking about Arts Council funding or something like that. Tom, do you want to answer that?
I can do, yeah. So I'm just trying to see this questions from Ron. Do you want to unpack this a bit for us?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just saw it was listed in the call. You know, when it listed potential sources of funding, it said that it could include cultural funding sources, and so I really was just wondering if you had anything more specific in mind there.
I don't think there's any specific ones we're looking there for. It's just that you're welcome to find match funding from other, other sources that aren't business development funds such as this. And, you know, certainly some of our applicants have brought match funding with them from all kinds of sources. Yeah.
But not all, not all.
Okay, I mean, could a cultural funding source be your sole source, or you're saying that it's just kind of a supplementary source?
You don't have to bring match into the project. We're just saying that we welcome projects that bring match. If you have a slightly you know, something slightly bigger that you want to make and you want to use some of that funding alongside it, but you definitely don't have to have match. It's definitely not part of the of what we're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome, Mom. Fern.
So the next one we've got, I'm putting two questions together because they seem to be quite similar. Can you apply as a sole trader? And also, do you have to be a company to apply, or can you join up a team of individuals?
So you need to be a team of individuals. If you're a sole trader, you can apply. We will get you to set up a company as you move into the prototype is the easy answer to that. We don't accept people applying as sole traders on their own. That's really, really important. Don't stick yourself in and then say, oh, I'm going to find some people to do this with me. We're looking for collaborations, and we're looking for teams that are already there. Those teams, I think someone else was asking a question about this, those teams may have just come together very, very recently. I think we asked a question about that. And that's fine. And it's really about explaining who they are and why they're good at what they're doing and why they are the right person to be doing what they're doing. And it's just convincing us that it's going to work, really. Of course, lots of people have come into this project with people that they've met quite recently. They may even be people who they've met through one of our fellowships, and they've just started collaborating. Yes, collaboration can be risky, but it's also something that we really want to encourage. Thinking really clearly about IP will be really key here and will save you an awful lot of pain down the line. So knowing who owns what and whose idea is which idea will, Paul's nodding, will save you a lot of pain. And that's really something that perhaps we don't think about, particularly as a lot of us are freelancers. And, you know, we're kind of used to working in that environment as artists, creative tech people. We quite often work on our own. But you do have to formalise that and really think about it in that way. Tom, is there anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I guess put yourself in our shoes. If you're putting a team towards us, make it clear who all those people are, what amazing skills they bring to the project, why they're all there, and why this thing really deserves to be funded because there's an amazing team behind it.
Sweet.
Yeah, and
sorry, go on, Andy. Sorry, excuse me.
I was just going to echo that. At the moment, it doesn't really matter what kind of legal corporate entity that your team may or may not have. You don't have to have a limited company at the moment. We can advise you as to setting that up, or whether that's required, or if there are perhaps alternative structures that might work. It's all about who are the individuals that you're bringing into the project. Do they have the right skills to deliver your prototyping kind of vision? We don't worry about whether this is a new team or whether it's a well-established team particularly. And as with Paul articulated, even if there are changes during the project that are unforeseen, you know, we can be flexible around that. But during the application process, it's about kind of convincing us of your credibility to be able to deliver that prototype that you're, you know, your idea, bringing it to life.
And I guess also, I mean, I'm sure you'll see this in the call, we very much see this as part of your trajectory. So we're really looking to fund something that will have legs beyond the money and time of this prototype. You know, you're moving towards a thing which you can show to the wider world and use to bring in more investment or more people. You know, this is not a project which we're going to fund and forget, and then at the end of the 3 months we'll all dust off our hands and say, well, wasn't that fun? Hopefully it'll be fun. But you know, it's really what you're doing now and how this help you get to what you're going to do next, and that might be part of the team as well.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Andy. Fern.
Next question. Okay, so can you apply with a project that's already had some seed funding but will explore a different area?
Andy Wood. Tricky one for Andy Wood.
So that is fine, but what we're not interested in funding something that you've already done. So this has to be new work. We are interested in helping you to try some new aspects. So if you've had some seed funding that's got you to a position where you've found a requirement or a need for something that you would like to build and try, as long as you can kind of draw a box around it and say you're paying for this bit of development, and you can communicate that and convince us that this is really new work and it's very interesting and fascinating and will totally transform your product, business, whatever, then we're quite happy to entertain things in that sort of state. It doesn't have to be like starting from greenfield. It can be building on things that are already there, and often that's a good way to sort of take things forward, because you know a lot of the fundamentals are already in place, and that's a good way for us to sort of show value.
I guess another thing you could show is that your main practice goes this way, and actually there's something really you've always wanted to try, and you know, rather than just being a whim, this is something really credible you want to try. You put a team around it, but it's very hard to get anyone else to take a punt on you. So obviously you'll need to persuade us that, you know, you've thought about all the risks, that this is a really exciting thing, blah 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 blah. But this could very much be something that is a sort of side branch to your standard practice as well. So very much like Andy said, you know, you're the right company and you're the right group to do this, but this is a sidestep away from your normal business and something you want to explore.
We love taking a punt, is the message there. Fern.
So I've got 2 questions about the application process for Tanuvi and Paul to answer if they would like to. So it's did you have to scale back your idea to apply when you started, or and also did you show mock-ups during your pitch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, Paul, you go ahead.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I scaled back. The agroecological information model is a much larger project, actually. So just to find like these first phase of the full development, and then the two parts that I wanted to prototype. So it's just automating the design, and in the future it should also automate the sort of like management and community interaction with the garden. And the other question, very quickly, I think I've actually been talking to Joyan in the chat, and I probably shouldn't have been. But so that was the question about mock-ups. I felt that I did show some mock-ups in the pitch, but only because it was useful to illustrate the concept for the purposes of the pitch. That's what I would say about that.
Yeah, and I think just to add that, I echo the same thoughts as Paul. But for us, we did show mock-ups, but they were quite simple. So because we didn't have any automation built, it was just slides that my co-founder Erin, who's a film director, mocked up on Illustrator and Photoshop. And we put it on PowerPoint to make it look like a mobile screen and as if dots were moving around. So it was a mock-up, but there was no real sort of technology behind it. But it just helped illustrate our point. Because sometimes a pitch just says so much more than you possibly can when you're trying to explain things in words.
Great, I hope that's useful. Fern.
So we've got next. Can you elucidate more about ethics and how important the theme is?
Yes, so there are ethics all the way through this call, and they're very, very important in the criteria. And that's because, as I said, some of these things came very much from our fellowship, particularly the stuff around inclusion and ethics. They felt that these are the 2 most important things when we're dealing with data now. And we've obviously come through a time where data has been extremely important in our daily lives, and COVID-19 has really highlighted that. So I think, yes, ethics is very important as a criteria. You need to address very clearly where you think the ethical issues are in your prototype, in your idea, and what you're going to do about that. And obviously there are in the if you're talking about the themes, there is kind of ethical, some kind of ethical drive that also kind of floats through that. I think we're very aware of that. Doesn't mean we're po-faced. We're not kind of looking for stuff that isn't fun, and we're not kind of just looking for things that are all about issues. But in fact, I should have put that in the call. But we are very much just want you to be really careful about how you're using other people's data. That's what it comes down to. I hope that's clear. Fern.
Oh, back to me. Sorry, a train's going past. It's excellent Zoom work from me. So Joyanne had a question in the chat. I can't, it might have been to do with some of the discussion happening earlier. Did you consider using agency for development, or was it always going to be subcontractors?
I think that's the Tanuvi, because Tanuvi was talking about subcontractors, but all can answer that as well. You both contracted people during your process, haven't you?
Yeah, so I think for us, it was while we had the design skills and almost the data side of things, even though we were an automation fellow, we didn't have the technical skills to build the back-end code. We didn't have that in-house, so we used a contractor, and we were referring to people that we worked with before. So there was a good working relationship, and it was a great opportunity that they actually joined our team at the back of the prototype. But I think there were some teams in the fellowship that had the skill set within their core team, so that was great. So I think it just depends what the skill sets you have and which ones you have to outsource.
And also building on that, is there an accepted ratio of in-house versus subcontracted work, and should subcontractors be presented in the application?
Should I take that, Melissa?
Yes, please.
So we don't have a particular view as to what the ratio of the work should be. I think we want to, when we're assessing it, kind of understand what that subcontracting is for, and kind of where that the value, the IP that's being created will end up. So clearly sort of articulating that you're going to pay X subcontractors to write you a little bit of software, but that software is going to belong to you, and then maybe have some sort of statement about how you would then perhaps take that software forwards would be the right sort of answer. But we understand it varies per project and skills that people have. I think following the kind of, should they be listed in the application, if you know who that's going to be that's fulfilling those roles and it's key roles, then absolutely we would like to see who they are there, because that's about presenting that you have the right team in place ready to go. If there are some gaps to be filled that are perhaps smaller bits of work that you haven't quite decided on who it might be, that's okay to sort of have a sort of like a budget line that's placeholder for X amount of whatever service you require. But if it was a large chunk of your project and you didn't know who it was going to be, I think that would be a harder sort of proposition for us to fund. I think also earlier there was a question about agencies or subcontractors as well. I don't think we have a particular view on that either. I think, again, it's about presenting it in that context of what you're going to do during the course of the prototype, and then how you're going to move forward. If it's a sort of, as in Tanuvi's situation, a well-known subcontractor to the company who then actually has a high likelihood of coming on board, that's fantastic. If it's a very, very large agency for which this is a throwaway project for them, that's not going to actually have any further involvement, I think we probably would view that sort of less favourably. But it may be they're a very, very large agency who just want to, try something new, and there's a long sort of opportunity for the future as a strategic partnership, in which case then that's a different story. But it will depend from project to project.
Thanks, Andy. Paul, do you want to say anything about subcontractors? Team members?
Only that it's good to work with people that you think you can work with again in the future, because like if you get some software developed, if you're subcontracting or putting it out to an agency and they deliver the product, and then it can end up just being a black box that you can and finding other people to sort of patch into that at a later stage to take the development further can be pretty difficult. So I guess that kind of like echoes what Andy was saying, that the preference, I get that explains the preference, or one reason for the preference, that it's somebody that you can work with in the future, can become part of a team.
Yeah, that's really useful. I mean, teams are really key to this, and yeah, those top line kind of main roles, we would really expect to see quite clearly explained. Burn done.
I believe that was all the questions in the chat.
Oh, amazing.
One. There was one that I just wanted to highlight because Tom kindly answered it in the chat as well. So, do big teams have a better chance than small teams? And Tom has written, no preference on team size. The right small team is better than a less convincing big team. From a practicalities point of view, you'll struggle to cover a meaningful amount of the time of a bigger team. Mm-hmm. Just in case people have missed that.
Yeah, and I think Andy would agree with that. Yeah, we're not looking for massive, whopping teams particularly. Yeah, it's just a team that can do the work, that feasibly do the work that you need to do. If you have a bigger team, you might struggle to do that in 4 months. Does anyone want to put their hand up and ask any questions? Hello, it's Jimena. How are you?
Hi, thank you. Probably it's very simple, probably I have missed, but I cannot find it on the web, is the time scale. So I know the time scale to submit, but then when you make the decision and if it's successful, when do you expect that this will take place?
So it will be December. We'll start in December, we think, depending on obviously world events, but we're aiming to start in December this year, and actually we end at the end of March 2021. So it's actually a 3 to 4 month process because Christmas gets in the way. The workshops will either start in December or January, but yes, we would expect you to be contracted essentially by the end of November. There's a contract that you sign with us, and then you start doing the prototype from there, and that's when you get your money. And we will then sort of embark on this work together of thinking about your business and your prototype. So it's a 3 to 4 month process. It's very tight. That's quite short for prototyping. As I'm sure you all know, it's an unusually short process. But on the other hand, we kind of choose projects with that in mind. So yeah, is there anything you want to say about that, Tom and Andy?
I don't think so. I think we have a clear. I think we're clear with you about your time frame is. Don't put in more work than you can possibly achieve in the 3 months because you think we'll fund you. We know how much people can achieve in 3 to 4 months. We're always astonished by how much people can achieve, but we know what is a correct amount of work. So don't make a rod of your own back. We're not asking you to solve every single problem on that list. We're asking you to design something that is innovative, inclusive, and ethical, and that answers the themes, and that addresses the key criteria that are there. Yeah, we'll support you. I mean, the 2 prototype teams that are here, Paul and Tanevi, worked extraordinarily hard over their period of time. But, you know, we're also very keen to get you to think very hard about what you can actually deliver in that time. And we'll work with you to sort of refine and hone your ideas down so you've got something that is finished and presentable over the course of that 3 months.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to draw it to a close now, if that's all right. Is that all right with you, Fern? I can't see you now.
Melissa, can I just say 2 things about the applications?
Please do say anything you like.
So I would just say that in the applications, we're asking you to answer the questions on 2 sides of A4. I think whilst you're answering those questions, just rather than trying to cram in all of the information you can think of and giving us like a thick ream of paragraphs which we have to pick out the kind of answers to the questions, try and think about how you can help us to find those answers. So good use of headings and bullet points to point at the kind of answers to each of the different areas that are outlined in the call would be good. And the other thing is there is a second opportunity to provide either a video link or a link to a document which has a sort of a more visual presentation. That's a real opportunity to get across and get us excited about the ideas. So if you've got some sort of video mock-up or some very nice sketches or visuals that you would like to sort of put in, please take advantage of that, because I think you'll find, you know, a picture paints 1,000 words, etc. And so that would be my two things. Think about the points and the kind of scoring side from us reading it, make our jobs easier, and secondly, communicate your excitement through the visual opportunity as well. That
is really, really helpful. Thank you, Andy. And I should say that the reason that we finish in March is that there is a data showcase, which we do mention in the call, and there is a data showcase specifically for data prototypes in March. It'll probably be later this year, it'll probably be March to June, just because of, it may be, allegedly, maybe later. We cannot commit to that, but we do finish the prototypes in March for that reason. And that showcase, if anyone came to the immersion showcase, is a really great place for people to meet new collaborators. It's also somewhere that we have investors, and we also bring in our data fellowship into that as well, and actually all the people that have worked across all our fellowships. So yes, thank you very much for coming today. Please do contact us if you have specific questions about your project, which I'm sure you will do. There are surgery dates on the website for across the Southwest, so that the surgeries across Falmouth, Plymouth, Bath Spa, Bristol, and Exeter, obviously. And we'd really, really love to hear from you. Our experience is the more you talk through an idea, the better your application will be, and the more likely you are to get to interview. So it is a really competitive process. It will probably be a more competitive process this year because we're doing data and everything is about data, and also because of the weird circumstances we find ourselves in. But thank you very, very much for taking time to come and listen to us. We'll put this recording on the website, and do get in touch with us. We're always here to help. Thanks very much.